Hello, hello, my beautiful friends and colleagues. It's great to see you all again on this episode of Healing Invisible Wounds, episode 5. I have a privilege to introduce you a phenomenal guest that has joined me from New Zealand. She got up early just to be with us here today. So first of all, kudos to you, Cindy Mullen, gorgeous human that is known as phenomenal publisher, literary agent, PR person for major Fortune 100 companies, actually, quite few that she worked with, and nobody that knows better the lens of what's going on externally and internally from that PR world, right? But also she lived in many different countries, specifically in Asia. Right now she's in New Zealand, obviously joining us from there, that has phenomenal world perspective of topic of discussion we have for you today. Why we started this series, I made a commitment to give it back the way I can on November 1st to have through end of the year this series of Healing Invisible Wounds, because I'm sure, Cindy, you can also affirm on your end and where you sit right now in New Zealand, how much not only COVID disrupted our world, but how much anything that companies didn't really work on kind of came up to the light, right? With being too busy maybe with different projects and different things, and all of a sudden everything related to people and people dynamics and cultures and leadership or lack of leadership came to full-blown exposure, and a lot of people are struggling. Holiday is also very challenging for so many because of losses, of fragmentation of their family, or illnesses, and these invisible wounds that are very hard and difficult and challenging to deal with. So Cindy, first of all, welcome. And if you don't mind sharing, what's your perspective just on kind of high level before we deep dive?
Yeah, thank you, Izabela. It's always good to be here with you. I always love your wisdom, and I always come away feeling energized and strengthened with your leadership skills. So thank you very much for having me. And yeah, the pandemic sort of took us all for a loop, didn't it? But here in New Zealand, I am so blessed to be in a country of a team of 5 million. And it was really amazing to me how the country came together. And I was invited into the Global Entrepreneurship Network, New Zealand. And we all got on Zoom calls and people were sharing resources. Well, you go to this department to get your salary reimbursed or things like that. You know, they were giving financial help for entrepreneurs and things. And people were sharing all this amazing information in their companies. And I thought, this is just like ideal. I mean, anybody could go through a pandemic with these kinds of friends and colleagues. And so I've become a part of that Global Entrepreneurship Network now. And we have monthly meetings on Zoom and catch up with what every incubator and accelerator around the country is doing and things that are happening in their area. And if people need help, you know, they ask for it and people will pitch in their time and effort. But yeah, it's been a really difficult time for a lot of people, even so.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love how you preface it that you are part of the 5 million team. And everybody says, oh, it's easy because New Zealand's such a small country and they're all in any way isolated on their own and whatnot. But still, 5 million people to work as a team, it's remarkable. And that requires not only skill set, but also trust and shared understanding, all of those things that are essential and very important, right, in corporate world. So with that in mind, obviously New Zealand is setting precedents for so much. First of all, female prime minister, transparency, engagement, opportunity, as you said, for everybody to find information or ask question or be helped and assisted. I mean, I just love the sense of communal support. And you said something also very powerful. Even then, still people are having a lot of challenges and hard times.
Yes.
So, do you mind sharing a little bit of things, obviously, how you see it? Because we're both of us travel the world and work with large corporations and being exposed to so many different cultures, right? And through the cultural aspects of things, we're seeing tremendous shifts and changes. I mean, with someone like herself, who is being not only helping to stories to be told through publishing avenues, through advisory as a PR. And PR is not always beautiful, pinky, rosy, great, and positive, right? Has a lot of issues there as well. You've seen a lot of things before COVID. So do you mind telling us a little bit what you were seeing symptomatically as a problem? And as our great colleagues are joining here, we're having Liga joining us from Costa Rica. Absolute pleasure to have you with us again. You're not only with your phenomenal wisdom, but also as a fellow educator who is reforming education and someone who is passionate of people. I will love your perspective. Welcome. And we also have a Matthew here who is joining us from Canada. Matthew, great to have you. Actually from Ireland, I'm correcting that right now. I'm sorry. I don't know where Canada came from, so please don't take that against me, the passionate Irish, but definitely great to have you with us as well. So please.
Well, the first thing that Jacinda Ardern said to us when the lockdown came was be kind to each other. That was the first thing out of her mouth. And so that was our leader. That's who we looked up to, and that's who we listened to. So we checked on our neighbors. We went around the neighborhood to see if anybody needed help with getting groceries into the house when we were in lockdown and we were only supposed to go to the grocery or the pharmacy, right? And that was just the tone that she set, which is so important in a leader, right? And then you look at the fractious. What's really been difficult for me is to watch how the United States has just sort of devolved, in a sense, into political factions and infighting. And it's really, really been sad to watch. But, communication is key, and leadership is key. And one of the things that Jacinda did that was so helpful, she would do a Facebook Live with us at 10:30 at night, right? And she'd say, hey guys, I'm just checking in, making sure everybody's okay. And she'll read the comments and she'll answer questions. And it's just a conversation with Jacinda, And so communication. We have a special news program every day at 1:00. They update us on, the COVID issues and what's going on. And we're about to go into a traffic light system and be a little bit more open because we're up to about almost 90% vaccinated, double vaccinated. And so that's going to be our protection, So we're just going to use all the tools in the toolbox and do what we can to protect our neighbor and to protect our families and to protect ourselves. So, yeah, her leadership, I think, made all the difference in the world here.
I can definitely see that, and this is a great opportunity as we see, even without COVID, without political and economic issues. Always, what happens when we put people in front, things unfold differently, and both of us experience that in many scenarios, right? And again, I'm so glad you're sharing that amazing experience, and fortunately, with so much smart, capable people and so many great resources available, unfortunately, we did not get as much of that unity and unifying, and as a result, better outcomes. But now, with everything that we learned, back to invisible wounds. A lot of times, people that lead also, they're wounded themselves. They are not necessarily equipped to lead in general sense, let alone in times of major turmoil and challenging times. Because a lot of times we're seeing, Cindy, don't we, people that are having title and position and the power, but not necessarily always the right skill set and not always necessarily right mindset. And you personally experienced some interesting things with this horrible sense of how do we deal with something that appears outer fine, but internally it's in turmoil and it's horrible, toxic situation. Either we're talking about individual, either we're talking about team dynamics, or are we talking about organization? So do you mind sharing a little bit from your perspective and personal perspective, how did you get exposed to some of those elements and how did you handle them?
Oh, well, we've all dealt with narcissists and sociopaths. A lot of them are leaders of companies, as you know. Um, but yeah, it's very difficult when you meet it for the first time. And also, when people are under pressure, they're going to, some of the negative aspects of their personality are just going to come out naturally, because we're all in a pressure cooker, right? And something's got to give, something's got to pop. And so I think when I first dealt with narcissism, I didn't know about it. So I, of course, did all the research and I read up on what is it, the diagnostic manual that tells you the 9 characteristics of a narcissist, and the fact that they have no empathy for anybody. They only see the world that they're at the center of attention. And so nothing is a part of their life unless it relates to them. And so for that reason, they're never going to understand your opinion, the way you think people should understand your opinion or your skills. And so the best lesson I learned for that was to stay as far away as possible, whenever possible. But of course, you can't do that, in a work setting sometimes.
Yes.
So you just have to learn how to deal with knowing where they're coming from and then presenting your information according to how they're going to perceive it the best. So it is a real skill to sort of put your old ways aside and decide, okay, I have to frame this situation a little bit differently than what I'm used to. But it boils down to just research, learn who you're dealing with and learn what they're where they're coming from. And actually, I wanted to give you a resource that really helped me a lot, was Why Good People Do Bad Things. I don't know if you can see this, but
yes.
It kind of gives you the underlying motivations of certain people's behavior. It's by Debbie Ford, How to Stop Being Your Own Worst Enemy. And, we all have our bad days, our good days and our bad days. And so it was just very helpful. She was saying, we all kind of live with a shame in the sense, memories that we regret. And so we put on a mask to overcome that shame, which may not be our real selves. And then she'll say, what this type of shame brings about, what kind of personality it brings about. And so it really helps you, gives you a real understanding of all of the people in your circle in the company, for example. Yes. And you can learn how to deal with them in a way that is more appropriate for you. Otherwise, sometimes you're just clashing and never the two will meet, right?
Excellent point. And I just wanted to step back for a second and share, reflect on what you just shared for everybody that's now joined us. And we're also seeing here a comment from Marcus that he was saying that is very interesting. It's being discussed for employment by narcissists. I've seen her. Oh my goodness, it was from day one. The trouble being she's there never. Let a narcissist to know, okay, they're narcissists. So it's very, very true. They will never admit they are. And interestingly, Marcus, I think that's an excellent point. A lot of narcissists don't believe they're narcissists until some of them get clinically diagnosed. And even when they get clinically diagnosed, they don't go through process treatment and they don't take care of their ideations and they don't take responsibility what they're doing. So we're really addressing one of the biggest elephants in the room, because when we have narcissists in our working environment, affects team dynamics, affects us so much individually, and drain us. It's very hard, as you said, takes a lot of skill and talent, and for everybody to have the level of skill to address or dance around the issue, it's sometimes truly impossible, right? And a lot of times organizations and leadership teams should take a responsibility to understand who they have on their team and how they're handling that and how is that hindering culture and dynamic of the team, performance, and everything related to that. In addition to that, I'm seeing a lot of shifts because now think about it, you have a boss as a narcissist who is affecting everything, and on top of it, you have a people that are already struggling and having their own personal challenges. So now it's ripple effect of multiplying factors that are just can really going to create a lot of challenges, right? And I love the book that you just referenced to because we have to understand where people are coming from, but we cannot be covering up for them. And we cannot be dealing with things that are beyond and above that we cannot do, right? Beyond our scope. Because I've been in scenarios, Cindy, myself, and wasn't pleasant. And you never knew when they're going to lash, when they're going to publicly embarrass you, or where they're going to take a high road, or where they're going to bring you in discussions. And it's hard to expose them. You're so true, Marcus. When we try to expose narcissists, it's not easy because depending also who is protecting them. Sometimes the narcissistic behavior, believe it or not, reversely also soothes the upper layer of the leadership team because they feel like that way they have a more privacy for themselves or more or disconnect from the team because that's what they sometimes seek and want. And that's where all this destructive behavior come in. So do you mind sharing a little bit about some of those things, how you experienced and how that affected you and created some of your invisible wounds and emotionally scarred you through that process, Cindy, before you stepped up and make a shift?
Well, like I said, I read up on everything I could get my hands on about narcissism because I had never experienced it before in the workplace. And, but we had teams. It's kind of like rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. You can move people around, but you're still going to have problems, wherever you move them around. But you can try, as a manager, you can try to move teams, teams that gel a little bit more than other teams, and move people around until they find a really comfortable place. But yeah, I mean, as the gentleman just said, exposing them, that's really the worst thing you can do, I think, because they just can't see themselves the way other people see them. There's just no way. And also, when narcissists are diagnosed, the likelihood of change is so minuscule
Yes.
I mean, it's just so minuscule. So you just have to work around it. You cannot think, oh, well, I'm going to change this person if I just say this thing. If that's the mistake you get into, and then you just go down the rabbit hole of back and forth. So that's why I said the best lesson I learned was to stay away as much as possible. Do your work, do it well, but try to reduce those encounters, that are going to be uncomfortable. And just work around it as best you can because you're never going to change them.
And that is so very true. And I really want to highlight that, what you just said, because people can only change if they chose to, regardless if they're narcissistic or not. And a lot of times for people, how they cope and operate served them for so long, so well, that they continue to exhibit same behavior, right? But now we're seeing shift, and we don't see any more appetite for a level of tolerance as we had before for abuse, for so many different elements, right, in the working place specifically. And as a result, we see a lot of lashing and revenge and a lot of turmoil, which is also giving a lot of people difficulty and challenges, right? Because you have on one hand something that it's being tolerated for so long that it's inherited as okay, and then you also have something that can blow up and you never know the ripple effect and damage, and that damage can be really, really devastating.
Definitely. They can cause so many rifts between people. And that's the thing you really have to be careful about, because the revenge is a real thing. And it can be very surreptitious. So they'll be, getting their team on their side by talking about you behind your back or something like that. And, you can be stalked, or, there's all kinds of things that can happen. But that's why I said, calling them out on it is just going to ask for revenge. to come your way. And that's why I'm saying just do your best to work around them as best as possible. But I guess Marcus said, they do make good employees sometimes because they're brilliant. They're just brilliant, and you need them on the team, So,
and that is an excellent point. Go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say, you just have to learn to live with them because they are brilliant and they do offer a lot to the team. So.
And that is the dance, right? I remember some organizations when they had a phenomenal A+ team, but then they had some not only egoistic but narcissistic behaviors. And even with the great results and for long, the dynamics were going and going and going. But what they didn't realize how much created the damage from supporting team and other roles, and specifically women. And to the point that finally one of the leaders, a managing partner of the firm, stepped up and let him go. And what happened is he was blown away how everybody else actually rise up and did even way better and helped organization to take it to the next level, but also to really bring everybody with it, from supporting roles as well as from different supporting departments. And in hindsight, he said, I wish I did this sooner because of charisma, being liked and being also the best performer or whatever it is. But that also created not sense of unity of team and not cohesion and not shared vision. And as a result, really backfired on many ways on small things that compiled and added to be then absolutely impossible to ignore, right? Yeah. And sometimes we have to understand and look at, but what do you do when you don't have as much of support at work and in working environment, when they're possibly your even boss, right? That is, Marcus is saying that as well. That's fantastic. But what would you say for someone when you deal with bosses that are like that? And what would you suggest? Because it's sometimes people feel being pigeonholed or put in the corner, right? Mm-hmm. And because of their own stressors, they don't feel strong enough to seek for help or ask for right decision or right choices. And what would you recommend there?
Well, a lot of introspection because, coming up against something that's really difficult to handle brings out your weaknesses, right? It shows you where your weaknesses are. And so I guess that's why, did you ever do those DISC? I guess is it called DISC?
Yes, DISC personality assessment. Absolutely.
Yeah, the personality assessments. And so we did that with a team at one of the companies that I worked with. And it was really interesting because it was like, then you could go and say, oh, well, when you talk to so-and-so, you need to do this, this, this. Just be matter of fact, They don't like a lot of chit chat or whatever. And so you would learn how to communicate to different people based on their personality preferences and who they were. So it made you think, oh, well, am I cutting people off, unnecessarily? Am I being too curt or too harsh or something? And so just a lot of introspection and then just forgiving yourself for making mistakes because we're all going to make mistakes, in our relationships with colleagues and all of that. But I worked with a lot of young engineers for a while here in New Zealand. And the one thing that I told them is don't burn bridges. Just don't burn bridges. There's just no reason for it because your enemy today might be somebody that hires you tomorrow,
True.
And so I try to go through every relationship like that and just say, I'm being angry and storming out. That's just not going to get anything done. Just try to deal with what's in front of you in a most compassionate and loving way as possible. Not always easy. I don't always do it right. But you can forgive yourself and say, oh, okay, well, next time I'm going to do better. And that's how we grow. That's how we become better managers and leaders. And we learn from our mistakes, unfortunately.
I definitely cannot agree more, and that requires a lot of wisdom and self-control, right? And being able to be staying grounded, and then also, frankly, not to take all of those things personally, but in the same time learn from it, and then not just ignore them, as a lot of times people keep tolerating, and then blowing up, because you want to also be able to process and then and take a right course for yourself. Everybody's different. Your tolerance is different than mine for certain things, and it's very important to also know yourself, right? How much you can tolerate and what you cannot tolerate, and what's negotiable and what is not, right?
Right.
So with that in mind, I'm really curious, obviously based on our experiences and from your lens of working with some major Fortune 100 companies and seeing things also from different culture. I know that mental health, and specifically something as robust as being narcissist or clinically diagnosed narcissism, it's very, very challenging for so many cultures to navigate. Mental health is still tremendously taboo, and US is finally getting a little bit grip on that, but we're so far behind. And I'm curious, what do you see, and how do you see some of the cultures like that you lived in, I still live in Japan, New Zealand, and some other Asian countries are dealing with some of those issues? What do you see that's maybe working in their favor, and that helped you, and what's some of the things that you felt like actually are just not as effective?
Yeah, mental health in Japan is a real taboo subject, So, I mean, it's um, changing somewhat, but so many people suffer in silence. In Japan, um, a key ingredient of every person is gambatte, just hang in there, gaman suru, hang in there, just endure what you're going through. And and so a lot of people just gaman, they just suffer in silence and just endure. And then it leads to karoshi. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but overwork in Japan, death
Yes.
death by overwork in Japan is
Yes, and
a,
insanely high stress, and yes, absolutely, yes.
yeah,
And suicide also, very high suicide rate, unfortunately.
yeah, exactly. Sometimes you'd be on the train in Tokyo and it was stopped at a station and wouldn't go, and it was because somebody had jumped on the tracks, or something like that. And so it's really a part of life, but I think they're trying to come to terms with it and trying to be a little bit more work-life balance. But the life of a salaryman, and I was guilty too, working in a publishing company. You'd work till 2 in the morning if you had to, and then take a taxi home, or because the train stopped at midnight. So, and then the drinking, to go out, you can go out drinking. This is the one way that Japanese deal with their stress is they go out drinking with the boss, and once you've taken a couple of sips of beer, then you can just say whatever you want to say to your boss, because the next day it'll be all forgotten, so called, because you were drinking. And so that in that situation, you can tell the boss what you think, kind of thing. And so this drinking and going out after work is a big thing in Japan, and that's their stress relief, unfortunately, in some
Yes.
cases. But yeah, yeah, different cultures do have different ways of dealing with stress, don't they?
That is very true, and I love what you mentioned. I mean, it's horrible, but the concept that you just shared about drinking culture, I see that very much so in Europe and other parts of the world.
Yeah,
I remember from my life in Sweden, and a lot of times the similar thing, everybody thinks it's the Asians thing, that just to be polite and keep it all within yourself. But it's also a lot prevalent in different parts of the Europe. Like I remember a Swedish gentleman will do the same thing, will through their drinking then open up and share stuff, but very much so stoic and not showing much emotion and really not knowing what they even think or where they're coming from. So sometimes you have to kind of just to see where things can go, and it's kind of like you never know what's on somebody's mind. And then a lot of times it's like sometimes people share some very important stuff and you don't know what to do with all of that. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm not in position to make a change, or I'm not in position to really solve the problem, and could create really a lot of uncomfortable things, right? Because ultimately all of us want to thrive and be successful, but we also wanted to thrive and be successful together as a team. And right now, more than ever, we see the need for that, right? Don't we?
Yeah, definitely. When you're facing death every day, when you walk out the door, the pandemic might get you, that kind of thing. That's going to wear on you after a while. But, when you were asking me to do this, I was thinking about the resilience that the human spirit has. It
Yeah.
just amazes me what strength we really have internally and how much we can really go through and then come out. I mean, think about your life, right? And amazing, but that's made you who you are. That getting through that gave you the wisdom that you now share today with others. And so we were in Berlin in 2019 before the pandemic. My husband had a sabbatical year, and so we had 3 months in Japan, 3 months in Leipzig, Germany, and we traveled all over Germany. And we went to Berlin to the museum island. There's 5 museums there in a row, and there was this exhibit on prehistoric man, prehistory, and then the Stone Age and the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. And it was this video, cartoonish like video, and it showed the different tools that came in. And I just realized we've been adapting all our history, right? We're so resilient. We adapt to whatever comes along. And of course, we're all going to adapt to this pandemic. It's very hard some days, you have
Yes.
your really low days, but we're going to adapt. We've done it for millennia beforehand, and we will do it again. So I guess I'm a little bit more optimistic than some people, because I just feel like we're just going to learn how to live with this some way or another, and it's going to be different. Change is always hard, but we may find something new and exciting that we didn't even think about before, right? Because of the being up against the wall with the pandemic and what we're having to deal with.
That is so true. And I love what you just said, because everybody has a different level of resilience, right? And then
Right.
experiences either make us or break us, but also more resilient we are. Yes, it's very good and functioning for us, but then if others are not able to follow or be able to operate or coexist in the team dynamics very well, then it's really a hard situation. And we have a Matthew here that shared that also while he was living in Seoul, ironically, the high suicide rate was there in the Seoul. And he definitely knows the power of psyche. Thank you so much for sharing that, Matthew. But it's so interesting because all of those experiences and things we witness, everybody's coping in a different way, but we always come back to the same thing, how we're really raised, right? How are men raised versus women? Specifically right now, how men have been told not to show their emotions, how to push things back, how to look at things in different ways, etc. So I also, for first time, and that's why I want to also address this, because the series specifically, again, for during the times of holidays, doesn't matter what you celebrate, not celebrate, holidays are now becoming more and more openly, universally, globally highlighted, and as a result, they bring a lot of emotional issues to already complex living and working situation to so many. And this is where we have the highest suicide rate in the world. So Matthew, thank you for pointing out for the Seoul statistics, right? Not just the Japan, but we're also seeing some interesting trends here in the United States. And I know you've been in the United States before. Obviously, you are from the United States, Cindy, and right now situation is very, very gloom in many ways, because we're seeing tremendous suicide rates and increase with teenagers. And from one way, because of not only isolation, but also domestic issues, for not being able to really be independent, living conditions, poverty, abuse, mental health issues. I mean, all of those pieces out. And plus, they don't get chance and exposure to go in classroom, and so that teachers can identify these issues quickly and protect and help or interfere, right? And then we're also having interest in other spectrum that I always bring up, because we have a men in their mid-50s and mid-60s committing suicide that have a lot of resources, capability to see the help, but they just simply don't have anything left with them, and they chose to exit because of magnitude of pressure, issues, illnesses, and dynamics. So with that, narcissists don't make things better. And Liga, that is very good point. Right now, we need more than ever empathy. And do you mind, Cindy, repeating what Prime Minister told in New Zealand when everything started? Because that was something that I think rest of the world missed, and I would say most of the people in the United States.
Yes, when the pandemic hit and we were all locked down, the first thing Jacinda Ardern came onto the TV and said is be kind to one another. So check on your neighbors, check on your family and friends, make sure everything, if people need help. So, and then they started sharing resources that you could go to. And maybe that's, part of the problem. People just don't realize what resources are available to them. So, communication for all of that, call this number. Actually, we did have a very well, it was covered in the media, a suicide of a young entrepreneur here in New Zealand. And one of the key issues here is the tall poppy syndrome. So if somebody starts getting too big for their britches, and starts being successful, then, that's sort of frowned upon. And so they try to pat you down. In Japanese, it's called the nail that sticks out farthest gets hit hardest, because, I don't know if it's jealousy or whatever, but it was really, really bad. There was a very young, successful young man, and he just took his life because he had one successful company, then the second company that he started failed, and the media went after him, and it was really, really pretty sad. So, no country's perfect. We all have our good and bad points, but I think sharing resources, it just breaks my heart that he didn't have enough resources around him. And could walk through it and deal with it. But yeah, Jacinda Ardern, every day, like I said, I told you before, she would get on the Facebook Live at 10:30 at night after she had breastfed her baby, right? And she was in her, sweatshirt and, just about to go to bed. But she'd get on Facebook Live and say, hey, everybody, just want to check in with you and make sure you're okay. And here's what Cabinet's going to be doing tomorrow. And this is, how your life is going to change next week. And just continually, communicating. So I think that's something that we managers can learn from, is just check in on people, right?
And I love what you just mentioned here, a couple of points, but also importance that COVID just opened the door to really look at how we live, how we support, how we coexist and exist as a team, as a unity. And narcissism is just one of those dysfunctions there. And Liga, Cindy will share again this phenomenal resource, which I want to make sure that everybody get a hands on, because the more we educate ourselves, the better it is, right? And some of those invisible new wounds for some people are permanent. Some people never get over it. Some people get better. They will learn how to deal with that, but they are still always in front of what happened to them. And then when you're dealing with fragmented, not sense of unity and team, and as you mentioned, also not people in your corner that are great mentors, coaches, and they want to see you succeed, and they're there to give you world wisdom, when you feel like you're holding all of that on your shoulder, and you're feeling like you're being also called out or being considered as a failure, then that multiplies. Everything magnifies, right? If you're already vulnerable, and if you're already suffering, if you're already dealing with a lot of challenges. And Cindy, you remember our conversations we had, Cindy and I had many great conversations on Clubhouse, where we were also looking at top 3 fears, right? What people feel the most. And one thing is still number one, and this COVID proved it over and over, it's a fear of rejection. That we're rejected as who we are. Therefore, we're not good enough. Therefore, we're not capable to bring any of the value. And whoever is rejecting us, either someone we love or someone we really think of the world, that is like that sentence to a lot of people, right? And if we're not accepted in a working environment. And just the story you shared about entrepreneur in New Zealand and his suicide also shows we see a lot of evidence in, as you said, all the parts of the world, how important it is to really, as you said, be more kind. We cannot be kind enough. And I know that people feel like they want a silver bullet, right? But where is the silver bullet here?
Yeah.
I think silver bullet, it's coming from within us, right? From who we are as a human and how we show up for others, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the imposter syndrome, that fear of rejection. I think everybody, I didn't realize this, but men have it too.
Well, yeah, they have it more than actually women. That's why when I did analysis, most of the men, when you ask them about their 5 life languages, they want words of affirmation. And they're top guns, and they're the best sales guys. And they said why they went psychologically reversal, which makes sense. They go to sell to prove every day because they live and breed affirmation. They're the best. They made in the quota. They sold the best deals. The people love them. That they want them to come in other different companies and venues because there was constant self-validation. And I didn't really connect the dots, like, subconsciously I did. But that really hit me, like how much that self-validation needed. And you know why, Cindy? I'm sure you discovered that already yourself. Because we are not told enough early on what we're great at it and how good we are. We don't compliment. We don't genuinely highlight like how amazing you are with what you're doing. And then that is what scarred us for the rest of our lives in most cases, unless we change environment and create a more nurturing environment. With that in mind, do you mind sharing a couple of PR stories or something that you learned from PR lens that really companies at this moment, as their employees and great people that we're having here are talking about, that really can help to make a shift, much needed shift and change?
Well, when you were talking, it just reminded me of another resource that I found. I grew up in a dysfunctional family of alcoholics, and so that has its own dynamics, and causes a lot of wounds that took a long time to get over. But when I finally realized that it was alcoholism and that was causing all these problems in my family, I, of course, started doing all the research. But one of the things that's helped me too with imposter syndrome, it's becoming your own parent. And it's because, like you said, you made the comment, that nobody told us as a child that we did that really well. And, parents don't always brag on their kids. I don't ever remember my dad ever saying, "I love you," ever. And so it's the solution for adult children of alcoholic and other dysfunctional families. So you learn how to become your own parent. And so when I start getting imposter syndrome or something, then I try to just parent myself, right? And just, hey, you can do this, even though I feel scared, or even though I feel like an imposter, like, oh, they're going to figure out I don't know how to do this, And then I just say, but you can just try. You're not going to know if you can do it or not unless you try, right? So you just have to kind of take that one step and take that risk. And so, too many people are just so risk averse. They don't want to take that step. Well, if you want a ho-ho humdrum life, fine, don't do anything. But you've got to get out there and take some risk. I mean, I did projects for I did video projects for H&M store openings in Nagoya and Fukuoka and Osaka. And I didn't know how to do video projects, but I could go and hire somebody that knew how to do that. And so I just produced it, right? I just went and got the good people to do it. And we went down and made these wonderful videos for YouTube, for these things. And then I did a technical project for Toys R Us, and you could go to the train station and do your Christmas shopping with your mobile phone, because you could, do a QR code or something on all the presents. And then while you were standing there waiting for the train, you could just shop at Toys R Us and have your Christmas presents sent, to your house or whatever. So I didn't know how to do that, but I hired the company that did, right? And so I don't have that kind of technical expertise, but you'll find a way. When somebody gives you a challenge, you just do the research and find a way and just do it. And it was the most fun I ever had, right? Because I'm going, wow, I did that. That was so cool. So I just say, sometimes when you have a monumental task in front of you, just do it. You'll figure it out. You can do it. We're humans. We're adaptable. We've been doing it for millennia, right?
I love the references. I love the reference with the Berlin Museum also, and then for how we evolved, right? Evolution of humans, and then where we're at today, and then also how we can really, but when we pay more attention to ourselves, right, identify what's going on, but also how we can get out of it, and how much stronger we are than we're giving ourselves credit to, right?
Exactly.
And how much more capable we are, and I love that. But I also love the fact that how you overcame through the process, also dealing with a narcissistic team member, and how that helped you navigate and not to deal with these permanent invisible wounds as so many people do, or how you dealt with the alcoholism in your family and those relationships, because I'm sure all of those wounds have sometimes they say they cut deep, but then also they made us who we are, and I love the reference on that, because if we ignore them, they make us victim, but if we acknowledge them and we work on it, they make us victors, because we overcame that, right? We get to the victory line. So do you mind repeating one more time the other book about narcissism and overcoming narcissistic issues, that I think everyone that is watching and listening and deal with a narcissist in their working environment, and top of what everything else is going on in their organization, and how they can really get some really practical advice?
Yes, the name of the book is Why Good People Do Bad Things by Debbie Ford. And as I mentioned, it lists all the characteristics of the things that we carry around with us. I'll just read a few of them.
Please.
It says, we all carry a shame, regret, wounds, things like that. And she lists cracking the code of the false self. This is what she says. My shame is that I'm a dirty, flirtatious slut, and I cover this up by dressing conservatively, shutting down sexually, and keeping men at a distance. Next one. My shame is that I'm a lesbian who doesn't belong. I cover this up by being funny, having lots of friends, and always being the life of the party. The next one. My shame is that I am insensitive and uncaring. I cover it up by being charming, a great listener, and attentive to everyone's needs. My shame is that I'm not good enough, smart enough, or pretty enough, and I cover it up by pretending to be perfect. I have the perfect kids, the perfect house, and the perfect job. My shame is that I'm damaged, a loser. I cover it up by being a corporate trainer and motivational speaker. My shame is that I'm weak, powerless, and dirty. I cover it up by looking everyone in the eyes and making them feel like $1 million. So we all carry these deep wounds. But she says, you have to learn to forgive yourself. And this was the key to that. One type of person cannot exist without the other, our good and our bad sides. Both are needed for balance and harmony. Understanding this aspect of our basic human nature not only gives us an important clue as to the masks we use to hide our shame, but also lays the groundwork for bringing out ourselves back into balance and making peace with the opposing aspects of ourselves that have been at war. So that's why I've learned how to say, okay, I'm having a bad day today. I'm just going to go with it. I'll have a bad day. It's not going to be the end of the world. I'll have a bad day. And then when I have a challenge, then I'll say, okay, I don't know how to do this, but I can figure it out. I'll just do the research and, start reading. And you just learn so much from other people, or call somebody that you respect and find out something, from them. So I just, when I look back over my life, see, I had the advantage of age, at 67, I can look back over a long career and see how things happen. But every single challenge, it was horrible at the time. I'm not, going to sugarcoat it. It was really horrible. And it was a devastating event, but I got through it, right? And that added wisdom to my life, and it added some new skills and some new perspective. And so I can look back over it and think, wow, thank you. That was really great, in the long run. And having a father who's pretty distant and never around and stuff like that, it used to just bother me so much. And then I realized, he fought in World War II. He fought the Japanese in the Philippines. And so it was after he'd been dead for 20 years. But I saw this, the Pacific War. I think it was produced by Tom Hanks. And I went, oh, my dad had PTSD,
Yes, yes.
And so there's always a reason for why people are acting the way they are. And they're human, just like you and me, as difficult as they may have been to get along with or whatever. And I saw my father as a human with, and compassion for like the first time. And it was just amazing. But it took me 20 years to get there, but that's okay. Eventually you'll get there.
And I love that this real like references, and also Liga and Matthew are saying thank you for reference to the book, because truthfully it is that human nature, and that's that the side that I'm being on both sides of behavioralist, looking at people, patterns, behaviors, and trying to understand the root causes. And while a lot of times families have different perceptions because they're not exposed to same individual journey, and they don't know. And if they don't want to talk about it, or if they cannot absorb it or cannot absolutely understand it, it's very challenging, right? But more we know, more we educate ourselves, more we learn, and then apply, right? Because one thing is just learning, but if you did not apply what you learned, you will not be here where you're at. You will not be on this trajectory and with the success, and not only in your personal life. I mean, being married for how many years, right?
45 this month.
Congratulations. And you don't look anything 60s plus in my book. So
I'm just getting started, Izabela.
And I know you, but that is the beauty too, because age is just irrelevant, because it's just a number to give us the point of reference, but doesn't really measure wisdom, or not necessarily, but it's what do we do with that? What do we do to live fulfilling, capable, and fully engaged life, right?
Right. Yeah, it's really amazing. I wanted to give one more reference, because I think a lot of people live in dysfunctional families. I don't think I was the only one.
No, you're not. That is very true. And then for a lot of them discovering now how dysfunctional families are during the challenging times, as we're seeing right now, right?
Right. This book, it's called Codependent No More: How to Stop Controlling Others and Start Caring for Yourself, by Melody Beattie, Beattie. This helped explain to me the dynamics of my dysfunctional family. I did not understand about, the codependent enabler mother that covered it all up for years, and then, the dysfunction of the alcoholism and things like that. So it was really, this book, I think I've underlined almost every page. I was just going through it going, oh, that's why she did that. Oh, that's why he did that. Oh, I got you. It was like light bulbs going on, the whole time I'm reading. So, with Codependent No More, and then How to Become Your Own Parent is a good one. This was sort of my journey out of dysfunction and into, being able to live free and clear of all of that. So there is a way out of the morass, as it were.
That is beautiful, and then also it's a beautiful example because it's your capability to have a healthy relationship and have a beautiful marriage and have a harmonious relationship despite all the challenges. So you're a great role model and great example, because when we know that we have something unhealthy going on, all those invisible wounds, all of the pains and suffering, all the triggers, we need to really look and revisit and take a responsibility individually, but also for put in position where we don't feel safe, when we're feeling a level of abuse, when we're seeing level of manipulation or any other issues, we also have a huge responsibility and opportunity not only to step up, right, but also to look at things in a way that we need to understand what is going on, right, and then when we know when we know more, then we can do better.
Mm. And I
When
think the hardest part is forgiving yourself for the mistakes that you've made.
Yes.
I think that really took some doing, you know.
And I have to say, all of us had a plenty of those. But if we continue repeating the same mistakes, if we continue damaging other people or not being complacent and not dealing with stuff, that is because we have seen people just, I'm not tolerating this, and they're just storm and leave and cancel. We also have this dramatic cancel culture that's not a solution either. Just because that, yes, it is bad, should never get to this level. That's why we're having, from PR lens also, I'm sure you can attest to this, so much of reactive types of behavior, because we don't look preventatively. We're not trained. We're not investing time and efforts, right? So that's when one bigger shocker for me was like how everything is happening, it's reactive versus preventative and properly thought through, and how a lot of times we have to then deal with the damage and aftermath of all of that. And again, we're addressing elephants in the room. One of the biggest one we addressed today with Cindy was around the narcissistic culture, narcissism, and how that affects team dynamics, ourselves personally and professionally. How more we know, how we can do better, but also dysfunctionality of what we bring, who we are, our own DNA, what we've been exposed to through our family dynamics, through our loved ones, and then how do we show up? How do we show up as a professionals? How do we engage with others? And then how do we have opportunities to deal with things?
Yeah.
That is good for you, Sultan. I'm glad that you only have those two fears and nothing else. And also, Liga, I just want to say, yes, being compassionate and be able to be kind and have these emotions available, even for the ones that are being perpetrators in this scenario, right? We need, because we may not understand it, but always, as you said, it's a call and big, huge reason behind it. So please.
Yeah, Ligia said, there's a reason for everybody's behavior. I said, I think that's why Jacinda Ardern said, be kind to one another, because you don't know what other people are going through. So just be kind. There is a reason for their behavior. But, and also, Sultan said he had a fear of death and fear of growing old. I had a near-death experience, and whether it was a dream or I really died and went over to the other side, it was as easy as a transition of walking through a doorway. And I had a brain aneurysm at the time. And so I'm not fearful of death anymore, because it was the peace that passes perfect understanding. And my head wasn't hurting, even though in reality it was throbbing like crazy. And so there was no pain, and it was peace, and everything. There was nothing that I ever had to worry about again, but I had the choice of coming back. So I came back to be with my family and my daughters. But anyway, I don't fear death anymore just because of that, whether it was a dream or whether I died. But
Yes.
I did have a brain aneurysm at the time. So.
And Sultana, dependent on the culture and upbringing, for a lot of people getting old and codependent of others and not be able to take care of ourselves, it's a serious situation. But also it's a luxury, because not many people get a chance to really grow old. So I also learned how to deal with that. And I just want to make sure that I'm not just brushing off the comment here, but also fear of that all of us will die, right? So the question
Yeah.
is how it's going to happen. It's all of us that got born and got here will somehow die. And we're all hoping for the peaceful deaths and surrounding people we love and care. And that's why we're doing the best we can with a life that we have, so we can truly minimize the aftermath. And how is that done? And is it happening naturally versus as we're seeing a lot of challenging times right now for so many? So I will highly recommend also to read a lot of books and talk to other people and find people that can really give you some really great sustainable results here. I
Yeah.
also love the points of how a lot of wisdom Matthew is drawing here, and thank you so much for partaking. And I just want to really point it out. Thank you for everyone for being here. Um, Absolutely, you're welcome, Sultan. But what we wanted to share is that participation, the great comments, and then great global threads, because we're not in this alone. Every single of us went through a similar thought process or thinking or information. So I just really wanted to say how important it is to also highlight everybody that participate, from Sultan, Matthew, Liga. I just want to look at everybody else here. We had a lot of you join us from different parts of the world. We have representation from obviously New Zealand, US, Costa Rica, Ireland. We had representatives also from Middle East, as well as we have some people joining us literally from also from Asia and other parts of it. So I just want to say thank you. And that's so beautiful when we have a global community and when we can all get together and learn from each other. So with that in mind, last closing remarks, Cindy, what would you like to leave our audience for today? We cover quite a bit in this power hour, which I really, first of all, want to express my deep gratitude for being here, as well for everyone who commented, who participated, who showed up. Please make sure you guys connect with each other, because all of you, Matthew, Liga, Sultan, and everybody else have phenomenal backgrounds and opportunity to continue to support each other in much more meaningful way. Marcus as well. I just don't want to make sure that I don't miss anyone. Okay. So closing remarks. We're to the top of the hour. And Cindy, please take a stage.
I can see why you enjoy this so much, Izabela. It's fun to have friends from around the world, isn't it? I just wanted to close with this brief prayer that someone wrote. It's a father's blessing, because a lot of us didn't have fathers that could bless us in the way that we might have wanted. But I had run across this, I just was flicking channels and came across this guy named John, what's his name? John Paul Jackson. He passed away in 2015, but he had a show called Dreams and Mysteries, and he could interpret dreams and things like that. A Christian pastor, but he wrote this as a blessing to people who didn't have a father to bless them. May you reach the purpose for which you were created. May you have courage above your peers. May you have more passion for the things of God than others think is necessary. May you dream more than others think is practical. May you expect more than others think is possible. And may you choose wisely without earthly bias. You have people to influence that you have not yet met. You have lives to change that are waiting for your arrival. You are strategically placed wherever God takes you by his grand design, just so you can become everything he made you to be. That place is the place you can grow best. That place is the place where you can be most fruitful. The place where the future is changed because of your presence. May you see vistas that others don't even know exist. May you see God in every petal of every flower and every blade of grass, for each of them are designed by his hand. May you bless your children, and may they become giants in the faith under the mighty hand of God. You won't fail. You were made by God to be here for such a time as this. I love that prayer, and I read it every time I need a boost of inspiration. So that's my closing thoughts to you, Izabela. You know I love being with you. I'll look forward to seeing you around on Clubhouse again. And thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful conversation. It's been a joy.
Thank you so much for this beautiful prayer, great conversation, and opportunity for everyone that just joined in and didn't have a chance to hear the full episode. Will be on YouTube, Facebook, as well as here on the LinkedIn. I really highly will recommend because it covers a lot of great wisdom and opportunity, as well great resources for everyone to tackle challenges and issues you're dealing on the individual level, as well as team dynamics and within your organizations, and as well, of course, in your personal private life. So with your friends and colleagues, thank you again, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at the same time. I have a very special guest, and again, I cannot wait to bring Cindy back. We'll be unveiling some really interesting stuff we've been doing in 2022. Stay tuned. Cheers.
Stay tuned. Bye-bye.